pivot it. Okay. Okay, this is CK. She's going to introduce herself and start.
You're fine.
Hi, everybody. My name is CK Duryea, and I was really delighted to have been asked to speak to you today. And throughout my presentation, I'd like you to feel comfortable with raising your hands, asking any questions, making any comments. I'm really glad I was here to hear part of the previous presentation, because I was thinking about what I'm providing to you, and it's the vehicle side of ways to give, and really the most important thing is figuring out why you want to give, what you want to do. And so I think our previous speaker really handled that well. And I will say one thing to that. Mark Twain has I'm paraphrasing from Mark Twain. His comment is, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why you were born. And I think philanthropy has a lot to do with figuring out and then putting forth with your philanthropy why you're here, what it is for you to accomplish. So, but with that, now I'm going to go to the dry stuff. And by the way, I also appreciate it because I work at the University of Nebraska Foundation. I started doing planned giving in 2000. So I've been doing this for 23 years. I started at the University of Nebraska Foundation, and then I've had the privilege to work a variety of places. Salvation Army here in Omaha, and then I had the pleasure of working with Cindy Peacock at the Nebraska Methodist Hospital Foundation. And then I went to World Vision, which is an international humanitarian organization. I was there for 10 years, and it was faith-based. It is faith-based. And I traveled all over the world with donors. At that time, they were changing from transactional to transformational, which looks like buy a well for $15,000, and we'll even tell you where your well is. That's a transaction. And they changed it to, we want to bring water, clean water, to a new person every 10 seconds. That's transformational. And our giving went skyrocketed, and they saw $30 and $50 million gifts. Granted, it's all on scale. When you're talking about 99 countries, it's different than when we look at a university system or our church. But anyway, and then now here I am back at the University of Nebraska Foundation. And this is actually my third time there. I started in 1984 when Woody Varner was still alive and was leading it. And that's who I learned from at the very beginning. So I've been lucky to have some great teachers, mentors. So we're going to talk about, let me see if I can do this good, about charitable planning. And I want to just start out with a little bit of a vision. Obviously, it's your passion and your goals, and that is more important than taxes. But there are ways to give smart. So this is going to be talking about ways to give the right assets at the right time in the right way. So there are a variety of ways to give, outright, revocable, which would be something bequest in your will or beneficiary language that you can change throughout your lifetime. Life income, we'll discuss that. That's actually a gift. You give and receive an income for life, and then the remainder, after you or any other life income beneficiaries are gone, then it's released for charity and other things like donor advised funds. Okay, so yes, revocable gifts, estate planning, your will or your revocable living trust, and I think you're hearing from other people today about that. And then beneficiary designations. And this is something that trips people up. a long time ago when you had an insurance policy and you weren't married yet and you put down, beneficiary, my sister, my mom, my dad, and it might still be out there. Well, it still has that beneficiary designation. When my grandmother passed away, we found a $10,000 insurance policy that was still in effect, and it was directed to her parents, and she died at 95, and her parents had been gone a long time. And then I was going through, when I was married, my husband and I were, oh gosh, we gotta kind of put things in order, and he had an insurance policy that the beneficiary was his ex-wife. So now I'm another ex-wife, but, we could have really benefited. And then one of our largest assets that we have in this day and age is our retirement fund, and that also passes by beneficiary designation along with insurance policies and any kind of account when you opened up your checking account when you were a 5th grader, or your latest savings account, or I'll even talk about one other one that I'm starting to do more and more. I'm working with people who are gifting their homes to charity, and they do, it's called, POD deed, or TOD deed, sorry, it's a misspelling, transfer on death deed. And I'm not saying don't have a will or trust, but there are going to be so many things that may pass through beneficiary designation, not through your will. And the number one thing that you'll hear is if the beneficiary designation says mom and your will says sister, mom wins. The beneficiary designation trumps anything you have in your will or trust. So that's why they've got to match up, or you really need to review those beneficiary designations. The good thing is it's really easy to update. Let's see, we'll talk a little more about IRAs in a minute. Yeah, I guess our minute has come. So you're probably also aware there are 2 types of, well, there are many more than that, but you have retirement accounts where you haven't paid any income tax on it yet, so it's pre-tax, and that's your traditional IRA, or like I have a 401B, and there are 403B, there are 401Ks. Typically those are pre-tax dollars, and so when you take it out, whether it's you or someone you've passed this on to, they're gonna pay taxes, or you're gonna pay taxes. And I'm sure we have a few people here that have hit 70, oh gosh, I keep forgetting it's 72 now, and it's going up. And so you're now at that required minimum distribution. And so we'll talk about a gift that you can do during your lifetime that helps you with your required minimum distribution and also helps charity. But because of how it's taxed, this is a great asset, and it's called income with respect to a decedent. This is a great asset to use for your charitable endeavors. And it might be, I have people who will make charity a certain percentage of their retirement account that will pass upon their death, and then some of it to their children. So they try to utilize it as much as possible for charity, but when it's your biggest asset, you may be thinking, gosh, I want a little more to go to kids. But just know the charity won't pay any income tax, and your children and loved ones will. So option 1, the will leaves $1 million to Nebraska Methodist, Nebraska United Methodist Foundation. By the way, I grew up in the Seward United Methodist Church. And all the other assets go to the deceased son. Son will pay income tax on the IRA funds. Option 2, $1 million from the retirement plan goes to the foundation, and all the other assets to the decedent son. and the son's not gonna have to pay any income tax in that scenario. Okay, life income gifts. So it has two parts. This is the reason we have a vehicle that's called life income gift. It's part gift and it's part income. So there are a couple different types of life income gifts, and I know one that the Methodist Foundation does pretty regularly, and that's your charitable gift annuities. And maybe has anybody done them or would like to? Okay, Larry, yeah. And so this is a life income arrangement where you give an asset, usually appreciated stock or cash, but it could be a home. That's just a little harder. Some charities won't do that. And then the charity, it's a contract with the charity, and the charity then agrees to pay you or your spouse or any two people, 1 to 2 people. It's usually a husband and wife, oftentimes, or sibling, a specific fixed dollar amount for their life. And it won't change, it won't go up, it won't go down. It's really focused on people who are not comfortable with the stock market. They want a real sure thing. The older you are, the higher your payout rate is. And charities usually follow the charitable gift annuity. There's an organization that comes together and puts the rates together. And those change from time to time. They've gotten much better. So I remember I used to do these quite regularly at Methodist Hospital Foundation. We had a number of nurses who either were single, they were dedicated to their career, or they were widowed, and they were older, and so they really didn't want to have the fear of what the stock market would do, but they needed a steady income or an increase to their income. And so this was a perfect way for that situation for those people to do gift annuities and have a steady income stream. And by the way, you live way past your lifetime. So it will give you 10 more years onto your lifetime, I swear. That's what we always tell people. By the way, the part that's gift, and we just have software that figures that out, connected to the IRS, meaning it's IRS approved. You get a charitable deduction on the part that is gift, and then you avoid capital gains if you gifted appreciated stock. The income, however, that you receive is taxed to you, and part of it will be tax-free. It's like your gift coming back to you, and some of it will be capital gains and some of it will be ordinary income. And I think of, like, when people say, what do you mean I'm getting some of my gift back? Well, at churches we have a lot of potlucks, right? So you bring your cherry pie and you have 2 pieces left at the end of it, and you take that cherry pie home and you get your 2 pieces back. So I always think of charitable gift annuities as kind of like a potluck at a church. Okay. This I put in here so you could look later at it. The second kind of life income arrangement is actually a trust, and there are various kinds. They're called charitable remainder trusts. There's a charitable remainder unit trust, and it's still the same thing. You give an asset, the trustee liquidates the asset, invests that liquidated asset, and you get an income stream for life. But with the charitable remainder unit trust, it can go up and down, and over time, you really, the goal is for it to go up. Your unit trust is valued every year, and so if you decided you wanted a 5% payout, which is the minimum you can do, it has to be 5% or more. As your trust grows, you're getting 5% of a larger trust. As your trust declines, your 5% is a smaller amount. So that's more for people that are not 100% reliant on this income. And then after the income beneficiaries are gone, and you can have more than two, and you could do it for a period of years, then the remainder goes to charity. And you choose that charity. That's part of the trust language. I would recommend, if you can, to make that, that you could change it. Now, I will tell you, at the University of Nebraska Foundation, if we are the trustee, then we trustee for free, which is, because we want to provide that service. But in return, your gift is, you can't change and take us out. Like, we're trustee for 20 years, and then you say, well, gosh, I really want it to go to the Humane Society. So you're kind of locked in. Some charities will have, and we've done this now too, where the charity will have a donor advised fund, which allows your final gift to go to more than just that charity. So I did a charitable remainder trust a couple years ago with a gentleman who he and his wife met at Midland University, and so he has a certain percentage going to Midland and a certain percentage going to the University of Nebraska Foundation for the benefit of technology at UNMC. Larry.
CK, as an example, I set up a CRUT when I was at Methodist Foundation, and I put in 2 pieces of real estate.
Yep.
Didn't have to pay the capital gains on it.
Right.
Did it at the time that I could get 7%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting, plus I got a charitable deduction at the time, and I continue to get 7%, and that trust has grown more than what I contributed by maybe 40%. So
wow.
I continue to get more money every year. Depends on the stock market and who the investment firm is.
Right.
But then the residual goes into the foundation.
Oh, I'm so glad you showed, you are a real life example of that. Real estate is a great, a second home. I'm doing one now with a rental property, and there's charitable intent, but they also said, we are tired of this rental property and the responsibilities that come with it. We just want a check in the mail. And so gifting the rental property, the trustee sells it. In this case, we're wearing that hat, and then reinvest. And now they don't have to unplug the toilets and repaint when their renter leaves it in a mess, but they get a check every quarter. You can do it monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual.
That's
And
what
a
I did.
charitable
They were both
deduction.
rental properties.
Yes, yes.
I got tired of, being the landlord.
Right, and they're actually making more money than they did as a landlord. So, there are great ways to do this with certain assets that you may own. There are a lot of intricacies when it comes to charitable remainder trusts, but I would say many, and I think you could do it very well, and I'm always around to help, but your charity can help you with this. It does require an attorney to I write the trust language, but then I say you have to go to your attorney and have them review it. And I just want them to have like this third party that is intelligent and familiar with trust language, looking out, just another person looking out for the donor. What if I make a mistake? What if there's something that I don't know that the attorney does, and that would would change whether this is a good or bad idea. So I'm always recommending that you utilize your advisors as well. But don't leave the charity out, because they're really good at this and they want to help you and you're helping them.
On that chart, before you change it.
Yeah.
The second column is labeled payments. Which way are those payments going? What does that word mean? To me or to the charity?
Oh, to you, or
Okay.
whoever you, so you have income beneficiaries, they're getting payments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And, yep, and then the charity or charities, are the remainder beneficiary.
Okay.
Great question. And when you receive that income, that is also taxed to you.
Yeah.
And it's taxed depending on the type of asset. It carries over. If you put in a highly appreciated property or stock, that asset and the capital gains that are there do carry over, but that's better than ordinary income, and it's spread out over time. Okay, so now there's some other gifts that people don't use very often, but boy, I wish they would, because they're so beneficial. There's a gift called a retained life estate. You can do this with your home or a farm, and if you are a person that you knew for sure, I'm gonna give this home to charity, and you have to be comfortable with thinking I have other assets that are gonna take me through life, because this is an irrevocable gift. You can do what's called a retained life estate. You continue to live there, you continue to pay the taxes, everything is same as can be, but you receive a charitable deduction when you enter into a retained life estate, because you're saying, I'm only retaining the life, the rest of it I'm promising to charity. And we've had maybe over 50 some years, I think we've had one time where the donor was more generous than their health went down, and so that person came to us and we sold it together, and so you can, and she was still able to receive some the money from that. We couldn't give it to her because the charity can't give to the individual, but it helped her with her need for money to move into a nursing home. But I've seen people get, the home might be worth $400,000 and their charitable deduction is over $300,000. And so it's a big deduction for those that are still itemizing. And all of these deductions, by the way, that I'm talking about, you have 6 years to use all of that deduction. The year you make the gift plus 5 more. But you can't spread it out. You have to use as much as you can the year you made the gift, and then as much as you can the next year with the carryover, and it's always as much as you can. But someone might say, well, I do itemize, but I can't use a $400,000 deduction in 1 year. Don't worry, you'll have 6 years. Donor Advice Fund. I want to spend a little more time on this, and I think that'll be the next slide. But Methodist Foundation has a Donor Advice Fund, right? New, or you were working on it?
Well, I'm working on the details of it, but we
Got
can,
it.
if anyone wants to open up a donor advice fund, anyone can.
So who here has a Donor Advice Fund? Okay, great. Would you like to tell us, do you mind telling us why you did and how you did a Donor Advice Fund and how you're using it?
Well, I was reading through the 5 choices of investments through the Nebraska United Methodist Foundation, and my eyes lit on that one because we can retain control of where that money goes after we give it to the foundation. We trust them and they trust us, which is a key part of it.
Yes.
But I have an awful, my favorite example is every year on the Give to Lincoln Day, last year we gave to 20 different organizations on Give to Lincoln Day.
Awesome.
Which was a total of less than $1,000. So it's just a little bit here, a little bit there, but I have an awful lot of things I like. And so, in my will or in my planning or charitable trust, whatever, I'm not prepared to give one single big gift to any place. And the donor advised funds lets me to, you know, it's a tax advantage. I took some of my dad's inheritance and rolled it over to our donor advised fund to avoid taxes on my inheritance. And then I can designate that money. The first question I put to the foundation was, how small a check will you write for me?
Right, cause they pretty
And they
much all have a
suggested 50
minimum.
to 100.
Great.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
And so I made one larger gift to Camp Fontenelle.
Uh-huh.
I'm planning to give to a local church, but on a regular basis, I hope I can continue, I will continue to contribute to that donor advised fund. There's the tax advantage to a charitable organization in UMF. And then, on no calendar, no requirement, no set requirement for tax years or anything else, the money just sits there. I've already got the charitable deduction. It's gonna make a little, but I have to give it to a charitable organization that the foundation board approves. And I'm just very comfortable with what we've got, and we just started it last year, so in 5 years, I can tell you more.
Well, yes,
For me,
yes,
it
yes.
was, I needed a place to put the minimum distribution.
Oh, yeah.
And see, it was
Oh.
supposed to be last year.
70 and a half.
Now it's
Uh-huh.
next
73
year,
for
and
us.
then it's gonna be another year. but
I
think
know.
We're gonna
Yeah.
So,
find a
yeah,
place to
her,
put
a
money.
lot of her IRA money will go right to the foundation, to the donor advised fund, and then we decide later how we wanna give it away.
Right, right. We do a lot of these like December 28th, 29th, 30th, right? Larry, just a second, this gentleman and then Larry. Yeah,
I had a donor advised fund when I was an active farmer. I would give a load, semi-load of grain, corn or
Yes.
soybeans to the foundation.
Mhm.
They would sell it.
mm-hmm,
I retained the expenses for producing that.
yep,
I just put the money in, and then mine was a little different. I gave money from the donor advised fund, not the income, but any amount I wanted, I always gave away. And I just gave the last of that donor advised fund away about a month and a half ago.
now do you
But it's an ideal tool for anybody like a farmer who has a crop they want to give away to avoid the income, but retain the expense of producing.
It is one of the smartest, using commodities for your gifting is one of the smartest things you can do, if you're in that, you know, you're a farmer, you, have, grain. And you have to be careful, charities, you know, some, have not had experience, but when you do it a couple of times, so it's important, like you drove it to the, co-op or what have you. And then there was a certain form, like the selling of it has to come, that green light has to come from the charity versus you. And some,
I cannot say so.
right,
The
right.
donor cannot say so.
Yeah, so there's a process and, you know, first this, then that, right, and, the best part is, like you said, you didn't have to count it as income, but you still got to deduct all the expenses to make that, to grow that crop. So, now, do you think you'll put more in, or are you done with your?
I'm not producing.
Gotcha. Do you think you might, think of another asset, or?
I have.
Got, okay, okay, great, because I just wondered if there was a reason that you're retiring your donor advised fund, you know, that kind of thing. People who have private foundations have been changing to donor advised funds right and left. There are so many advantages, and if I, what time
You
is
have
it?
about like 3 minutes left.
Oh, God, okay, there are a lot of advantages that, make the donor advised fund so much better. And now places are allowing, that have donor advised funds are allowing you to, make gifts online, you know, you really have, the first gentleman, said, you know, I get to control it. Well, sort of. I mean, it's a little bit of a wink wink. And the IRS does not like this, but, They haven't done anything about it. And that's why it's called a donor advised. You then are advising the owner or the, Methodist Foundation what you'd like them to do. And they could refuse to.
Yeah, it's their money now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, Larry, you had a question.
What happens when you die? What happens with that money in the donor advised fund?
Okay, you should make almost like your will, if I have anything left in my donor advised fund, this is what I want in writing, this is how I want it to be used. You can have a family member take over. One of the things that I was gonna say, and I know we're not gonna get to everything, but this is so important, you can bring your children and grandchildren, nieces, nephews into this process, and you can designate a successor advisor.
Yep.
So, yeah, and I think it's so powerful that way to help get the next generation into things. And a couple other things here, like a charitable lead trust, that would take forever to explain, but that's where the charity gets money for a while. It's the opposite of a charitable remainder unit trust, and then after a certain number of years, then it passes back to you or to your children. It's worked successfully for people who are trying to transfer their assets to the next generation and pay as little gift tax, transfer tax as possible. Bargain sale would be, we've done these where you might have a piece of property and you can't even think about the energy it would take to sell this piece of property. Well, you can go to a charity and say, it's worth $400,000. I'll sell it to you for $200,000, and now it's the charity's responsibility to sell. And then they turn around and sell it for, let's hope, $400,000. And but anyway, you'll get to deduct the difference between the fair market value and what you received for the property. And yes.
Well, I'm going in a bit different direction.
That's okay.
I don't want you to
No.
finish your thought.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Qualified charitable distributions.
Okay, oh gosh, did I forget to talk about
Well, that I think is, well, it's similar to the donor advised fund, except you actually, some holders of retirement funds will actually let you hold the funds in a separate checking account and you write the checks.
Yes.
But some will not.
Right.
Some require the check come from the holder of the funds directly to the, I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of our contributions to our church, qualified charitable distributions.
Mm-hmm.
And it meets the requirement, for having a required minimum.
Yep, your R&D. Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's not income taxable to me.
Right.
Because it's tax-free.
Right.
And the church gets something, I think we're missing out because there's a lot of RMDs that are out there and people are just taking it in cash. And if they would just go ahead, I think it's $100,000 max each year.
Max. Mm-hmm.
Then you can take, not in cash, but into a separate checking account and then you make the check out. So it's the best of all worlds, to my way of thinking.
So custodian, IRA, retirement custodians have gotten so tired of, they have to hire new people because so many people are doing qualified charitable distributions. And so they've found some simpler ways. They're basically saying, here, let's put it in this IRA checking account. It's never really yours for IRS purposes in that way. I mean, you haven't taken it out for yourself, and then you direct it and they don't have to take the time to do it. Does that make sense? And I think there'll be more and more of that happening. So it almost feels like a donor advised fund, doesn't it?
Yes,